Karen called sheriff for free gas, but I run the station in the county board. If you've never had someone call the sheriff on you for refusing to give them free gas, count yourself lucky. If they then tried to have you arrested at your own station, well, now you're in my shoes. My name's Tasha Brooks. I run the only independent gas station for 30 miles Brooks Fuel and Farm Supply in the town of Hollow Creek, Georgia. It's not much to look at: two old pumps, a general store, and a feed shed out back. Been in my family since the 50s, and I took over after my dad passed in 19. Most of the time, it's quiet. Locals know me. Travelers stop by for a cold drink and directions, and I hand out feed to folks with livestock. But that piece ended the day Karen pulled up. It was Thursday afternoon, sun blazing down, and I was restocking windshield wiper fluid inside when I saw the dusty tan SUV skid up to pump 2 like it owned the place. She didn't turn off the engine. She didn't even glance inside. She just grabbed the nozzle, yanked it hard, and then shouted, "What the hell is this?" I stepped out. "Ma'am, pump 2's down. The sign says so." Karen held up the laminated out-of-order tag ripped clean off the handle and wagged it at me like it was my fault. "This is a violation of HOA accessibility guidelines. You're required to keep at least 2 pumps open at all times." That's when I noticed the decal on her SUV door: Crestbrook HOA Security, Mobile Unit 4. I sighed. This isn't an HOA property. You're in Hollow Creek private land. Private pump. You're within the Crestbrook Development Zone, she snapped. We have shared emergency fuel access under Charter 5.29B. That means free gas for authorized HOA personnel. I blinked. Charter what now? She puffed up, digging through her purse. I'll cite you if I have to. Blocking fuel access is a code-level infraction. I should have walked away right then, but I didn't. I told her flat out, there is no HOA authority here, and there is no such thing as free fuel access unless FEMA declares a state of emergency, and they haven't. She got real quiet. Then she stepped closer, jabbed her finger into my chest, and hissed, "You don't know who you're talking to." "Ma'am," I said, stepping back, "you need to leave the property before you damage anything." But she already had. She jammed the pump nozzle back into its holster too hard, snapping the lever and sending a puff of vaporized gasoline into the air. The pressure valve cracked, the nozzle handle dropped to the ground with a clatter, and then she called 911. "Hello, yes. The gas station attendant is threatening me. I need the sheriff out here now." When the sirens came, they weren't fast. They were slow, steady, and familiar. Deputy Sheriff Marcus Lane rolled into my station with that same rust-colored dust caked on his fenders, and the look he gets when someone calls about a raccoon in a shed or a teen riding an ATV past curfew. But this wasn't a critter call. This was Karen. She met him halfway between her SUV and the pump, arms flailing, her HOA badge clipped to her vest like she was about to brief a SWAT team. She threatened me. "Marcus," she cried, voice trembling in a way I could tell was pure theater. I told her I needed emergency access fuel, and she became aggressive, said I was trespassing, tried to rip the nozzle from me. I stepped forward. "That's a lie." "She broke my pump and tried to claim HOA law applies here." Karen spun around. "You see, interrupting a sworn statement? Arrest her, Marcus." Bless him. Didn't blink. He turned to me first. "Tasha, you got video?" I nodded and pointed toward the station camera mounted under the old Coca-Cola sign. It caught everything, same as always. "And the audio, too. Want to come inside?" Karen's jaw tensed. "That's a privacy violation." Marcus looked at her with the calm of a man who'd been doing this job too long to be impressed. "Ma'am, that's a commercial property. You have no expectation of privacy while on it." She fumed, red rising under her foundation. "I have a badge," she said, holding up her HOA ID like it was a holy relic. "That's a laminated lanyard from Kinko's," Marcus replied flatly. "It don't hold weight here." Inside the station, we reviewed the footage. There it was, Karen tearing off the out-of-order tag, yelling about charter codes, jamming the nozzle back into the housing until the handle snapped. And then her face, calm and smug, as she made the 911 call, fabricating every word. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So she lied in a police report. That's charge one. She vandalized the pump. I added, we're looking at about $2 or $400 in repairs. Charge two, and she tried to find me with a fake code violation form. He whistled. Impersonating an enforcement officer. That's a felony if we push it. Karen was pacing outside the window now, clearly waiting for handcuffs that weren't coming fast enough. But Marcus wasn't done. She did this last month to Old Man Perry, too. Claimed his mailbox was in HOA jurisdiction and threatened to have his pension garnished. Why hasn't anyone stopped her, I asked. Marcus sighed. Because everyone's afraid. She drops terms like HOA charter compliance, pretends she's got state legal backing, and half the folks here don't know any better, especially the new families who moved in thinking she's legit. I made calls. Jazz from the diner, Lenny from the mechanic's shop, even Sam who sells feed down the road. Each had a Karen story. Jazz Karen tried to shut her down for unauthorized patio furniture that wasn't aesthetically compliant. Lenny got threatened with a $900 exhaust pollution fine for revving a customer's truck. Sam She demanded he stop selling horse feed because it encouraged livestock odor in an urbanizing zone. And always the badge, the printed forms, the HOA Charter 5.12 nonsense. But here's the kicker, Crestbrook HOA doesn't even cover my gas station. My land is sovereign, bought before zoning changed. It's its own parcel, non-HOA affiliated, and clearly marked on county records. Karen didn't just cross a line, she never had authority to draw one in the first place. That night, I posted the footage, just a short clip, Karen breaking the nozzle, Karen yelling into her phone, Karen demanding an arrest, captioned, "This woman broke my pump and called the sheriff to have me arrested for not giving her free gas." It went viral. Within hours, Hollow Creek's Facebook page was lit up. Comments, shares, DMs. Everyone had a story. Everyone had been targeted, and they were mad. A retired teacher posted Karen threatened to evict me from my own house, said it wasn't grandfathered in properly. Another, she blocked my driveway with her SUV when I refused to sell Girl Scout cookies off her approved list. And my favorite, I'm a lawyer, and I'd love to represent anyone she's harassed for free. The thing about small towns like Hollow Creek is that once the truth starts leaking, it doesn't trickle, it floods. By the weekend, everyone was talking about Karen, and not in the whispery, polite, Southern, bless her heart kind of way. No, this was raw, public, furious. After the video went viral, I had customers show up just to thank me. One woman, Denise, came in with tears in her eyes. She told my son she'd fine us $200 if he parked his bike outside the gas station again. He's 10. I gave her a soda on the house and told her what I'd been piecing together with Marcus. Because what started as one crazy woman with a fake badge was unraveling into something much bigger. Ellie, Marcus's cousin and a clerk at the county assessor's office, called me Saturday morning. She'd been digging through land records, boundary maps, and zoning designations. What she found, there was no legally recognized Crestbrook HOA. The original HOA had been dissolved 3 years ago when the developer went bankrupt. But Karen and a few board members had filed a private LLC under the same name with a new charter never approved, never acknowledged by the state. Essentially, they created a shadow HOA, and they'd been using it to falsely issue fines, coerce property access, demand compliance payments, and collect dues from dozens of homeowners who didn't know any better. Ellie's voice shook when she said, "They've pulled in almost $80,000 in 2 years, and none of it's on record with the state HOA registrar. They were running a racketeering operation, and Karen, she was the face of it." I gathered copies of the letters Karen had sent to me. Jazz and Sam, every one of them looked official, watermarked, legal sounding, with references to code books that didn't exist. But here's the kicker. She forged a county seal. Ellie confirmed it. That's a felony in Georgia. Marcus called the county attorney and sent everything over. By Monday, the sheriff's office opened an investigation. But we weren't waiting around. Not when people in our town had been paying fake fines, moving fences, repainting houses, all because of this illusion of authority. By Tuesday night, the station turned into a war room. There was me, Marcus, Ellie, Jazz, Lenny the mechanic, and Mrs. Granger, an 82-year-old who'd nearly lost her house because Karen said it violated the uniform aesthetic of Crestbrook. "I've lived here longer than she's been alive," Mrs. Granger muttered, "and I'll die here before I let some laminated badge witch scare me off." We printed flyers, organized screenshots, filed affidavits. Ellie drafted a complaint to the Georgia Department of Consumer Affairs, and Lenny, he called in a favor with a guy he knew at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Things were about to get loud. On Wednesday morning, Karen doubled down. She arrived at the station again, this time with 4 of her enforcers, all wearing HOA security jackets and walkie-talkies like they were starring in a low-budget crime drama. They parked sideways, blocking my delivery truck. Karen strode up and taped a new sign to my front door. "This property is in violation. Fuel service suspended until further notice. Crestbrook Community Oversight Board." She didn't see Marcus parked in the shadows by Pump 1, sipping coffee in his cruiser. He walked up slowly, tore the paper down, and said, "You're under arrest." Karen shouted, thrashed, and screamed, "This is illegal. I'm entitled to community enforcement rights." But her badge had no number. Her LLC had no authority. Her operation had no legitimacy. By sunset, her mugshot was posted online. The charges included criminal impersonation of a public official, forgery of county insignia, fraudulent collection of fines, destruction of private property, filing a false police report, civil racketeering under RICO investigation. That night, I hosted a meeting in the general store. It wasn't fancy, just folding chairs, sweet tea, and a whiteboard with the words, "Enough is enough." Over 60 people showed up. They shared stories. One by one, they stood up, trembling, defiant, angry. Karen had told a war widow her husband's memorial flag violated visual uniformity codes. She'd tried to evict a disabled vet for using a wheelchair ramp without approval. She fined a family $800 because their autistic son made sidewalk chalk drawings, and no one had stopped her. Until now. Karen's mugshot was barely 24 hours old before the damage control began. The rest of her so-called board started ducking for cover, scrubbing their names from HOA Facebook pages, closing email accounts, and even trying to claim they'd been misled by her too. But the paper trail was too long, too obvious, and Hollow Creek was no longer silent. Marcus, Ellie, and I had spent the last week building a timeline: emails, signed letters, payment receipts from fake fines, all showing a tight group of 6 people behind the sham HOA operation. They called themselves the Crestbrook Compliance Circle, which sounded more like a cult than a community organization. Their game was simple: use fear, create urgency, issue fake legal notices with official-looking seals, collect fines, threaten more for non-compliance, and it worked for 2 years, until Karen got greedy, until she showed up demanding free gas. The Hollow Creek Board of Commissioners scheduled an emergency hearing to address what they now officially labeled a systemic pattern of fraudulent enforcement practices and HOA impersonation. I was asked to testify, so were 5 other victims. And so was Karen, now out on bail and still calling herself Director of Community Oversight in every interaction. I walked into that courtroom in jeans and a work shirt, same as always. I wasn't there to perform, I was there to tell the truth. But the room packed, neighbors, reporters, 2 state officials, and even a regional consumer protection agent were present. We hadn't just made noise, we'd made a case. Karen arrived wearing a blazer over her fake HOA vest, as if layering professionalism on top of delusion might earn her credibility. Her attorney, a scrawny man who looked like he'd Googled how to defend civil fraud that morning, stood to speak. Ms. Whitmore was operating in good faith, believing she had community authority under private charter. Her goal was cohesion, not coercion. The room hissed. Then it was my turn. I run Brooks Fuel and Farm Supply. I began. I've been on this land since I was old enough to stack bags of feed beside my daddy. And in all those years, I've never been threatened the way I was by this woman. I held up the printed violation form Karen had taped to my door. This isn't law, it's theater. And it's cost this town money, dignity, and trust. I pointed to the rear, where Mrs. Granger sat with her cane. She scared seniors, bullied veterans, tried to punish children for drawing with sidewalk chalk, and she did it while claiming to be the law, but she never was, not once. The room erupted in applause. Karen tried to stand, but the judge waved her down. Then the state's consumer fraud agent stepped up. He said one sentence that changed the entire atmosphere. We're recommending criminal charges under the Georgia Racketeer, Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO for Miss Whitmore and 4 other named individuals. That broke her. She started shouting, screaming that I had set her up, that I was a gas station tyrant, that everyone was just jealous of order. She had to be removed by court officers. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic, because what she didn't realize was that her whole empire of fear had finally collapsed under the weight of her own ego. After the hearing, as people were filing out, a young woman approached me, maybe early 20s, pale, nervous. "I'm Karen's daughter," she whispered. I braced, but she looked up with red eyes and said, "I'm sorry. I left town 2 years ago because of her. What you did, it gave me closure. Thank you." I stood there stunned. No one tells you how to handle a moment like that. So I hugged her, because it wasn't just Karen's victims that were healing, it was people like her too. The ones who had lived in the shadow of that control long before we saw it in the public. By the end of the week, Crestbrook's fake HOA was fully dissolved. The county created a task force to certify and regulate all HOA activities moving forward. Every resident fined by Karen or her board got a full refund, plus an apology letter drafted by the county attorney's office. And Karen, she was facing trial. Real charges, real consequences. Meanwhile, I hosted a block party. We grilled ribs, played music, let kids ride bikes past the store without fear. Mrs. Granger brought her peach cobbler. Marcus brought a badge and a folding chair, and for the first time in a long time, we all breathed easy. You'd think justice would feel loud like a gavel striking, a crowd cheering, a door slamming on someone who deserves it. But when Karen's trial finally began, it felt more like a sigh, a tired, long overdue sigh from a town that had held its breath for years. It didn't mean the stakes were low, quite the opposite. It meant we were finally letting go. The state had built a strong case, 17 counts of impersonating an official, 6 counts of wire fraud related to fake fine collections, 9 counts of mail fraud, 1 felony charge for forging a government seal, 1 felony charge of filing a false police report. And under RICO statutes, conspiracy to commit organized fraud, Karen sat in court like a statue, cold, stiff, but not quiet. She whispered to her attorney constantly, eyed the jury, scoffed at witnesses. She still believed, somewhere in that warped mind, that she was right, that all of us were ungrateful sheep who didn't appreciate structure. But structure doesn't mean bullying, and law doesn't mean control. When they called me to testify again, I wasn't nervous. I told the story straight. No drama, no hyperbole, just what happened. The demand for free gas, the broken pump, the fake citation, the false 911 call, and how her abuse of made-up authority had spread across our entire town. I paused before I stepped down and looked right at the jury. She didn't just impersonate power, I said. She corrupted people's trust. That's the real crime here. Deliberations took 2 days. When the jury came back, the room was dead silent, guilty, on all counts. Karen didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked hollow. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in state prison, with restitution ordered to the victims, and a permanent injunction barring her from holding any role in any housing, neighborhood, or community board for the rest of her life. With funds seized from Karen's personal account and the Crestbrook LLC, the county set up a community repair grant. Damaged mailboxes were fixed. Fences torn down from fake code violations were rebuilt. And homeowners who had been pressured into paying dues got their money back, plus a small bonus for their trouble. Jazz finally put out new tables at the diner. Lenny got his noise citation erased and added louder pipes just for the fun of it. And me, I replaced the broken fuel pump with a brand new one, painted the handle red, and added a plaque that said, "For everyone who stood up and said, no." The Hollow Creek Board of Commissioners passed a new ordinance. Any HOA operating in the county must be registered, certified, and independently reviewed annually. And even more important, people finally understood that asking questions doesn't make you a troublemaker. It makes you a citizen. 2 months after the trial, I got another letter from Karen's daughter. I visited my mom in prison. She's still angry, still convinced she did the right thing. But I'm not. I'm proud of what you did. Thank you for giving me a version of her story I could survive. Sometimes justice isn't about turning villains into saints. Sometimes it's just about giving the people they hurt a reason to breathe again. Hollow Creek isn't perfect. We've still got our squabbles, our zoning fights, our neighborhood feuds, but now we deal with them face to face, not behind laminated badges or phony citations. I still pump gas, still run feed, still sweep the floor every night before locking up. But something's changed. People look each other in the eye again. We've all learned what it costs to stay quiet and what it means to stand up. Has someone in your neighborhood ever crossed the line pretending to hold power they don't have? Do you believe communities should have more oversight for HOA abuse? Where do we draw the line between authority and control? Speak up. Share your story. Let's talk about justice, power, and the courage it takes to say no more.